Right now, you feel like you're touching something. Your fingers are on your phone. Your back is leaning against a chair. Your feet are on the floor. You're absolutely sure of it. It's the most direct, undeniable sensation you're experiencing. But here's what physics tells us. You've never actually touched any of these things. Not once. Never. There is a gap between your hand and everything you think you are holding in your hands. The gap is so small that you cannot see it, but it is so absolute that nothing, not even a single atom of your body, has ever touched a single atom of anything else. Every handshake, every hug, every kiss is just atoms floating next to each other, repelling each other in empty space. If that's true, and it is, then what exactly are you feeling right now? Let me show you how deeply ingrained this is. Raise your hand. Look at it. Solid, right? Made of flesh, bone, blood, real matter. But here's what that hand really is. 99.9999999% empty space. If you removed all the empty space from all the atoms in your body, you would shrink to less than the size of a grain of sand. And the substance that makes up your body, protons, neutrons, electrons, would fit on the head of a pin with room left over for the entire human race. But it gets even stranger. These particles aren't even solid themselves. An electron is not a tiny ball spinning around a nucleus like planets around the sun. That's a lie you were taught in school. Electrons are clouds of probability, areas where a particle can be found if you look for it. Until measured, an electron has no specific location. It is simultaneously everywhere within its cloud and nowhere in particular. Your hand is not made of matter. It is made of mathematical possibilities that sometimes collapse into something that looks like matter. So when you touch something, what is really happening? This is where physics really starts to get weird. In every atom, electrons revolve around the nucleus in these probability clouds. When you reach out to an object, the electron clouds of the atoms in your hand approach the electron clouds of the atoms in the object. And here's the important thing. Electrons have the same negative charge. Identical charges repel each other. This is one of the fundamental forces of nature, the electromagnetic force. As your hand approaches the table, the electrons in the atoms of your hand begin to repel the electrons in the atoms of the table. They never touch. They cannot touch. The electromagnetic repulsion becomes so strong that your hand stops moving. You feel resistance, pressure, hardness. Your brain interprets this electromagnetic repulsion as touch. But there is a gap. There is always a gap, usually about 10 to the negative 10 meters, 1/10,000,000th of a meter. For comparison, if an atom were the size of a football stadium, the gap between atoms during contact would be equal to the width of a human hair. Tiny, but absolute. Your atoms and the atoms of the object float next to each other, repelling each other in empty space, never meeting. Every tactile sensation you have ever experienced is an electromagnetic repulsion that your nervous system converts into what your brain calls a sensation. You may be thinking, okay, but I still feel it, so what's the difference? And that question opens up the whole realm of reality. After all, if touch is an illusion created by your brain interpreting electromagnetic forces, what else is it making up? Let's talk about color. You look at something red, a stop sign, an apple, blood. You're sure that redness is a property of the object. But that's not the case. Objects don't have color. They have surfaces that absorb some wavelengths of light and reflect others. When light with a wavelength of about 700 nanometers hits your retina, your brain generates the sensation of red. This redness does not exist in the object or in the light. It is a construct, an interpretation, a useful fiction that your brain creates to help you navigate the world. The same is true for sound. There is no sound in the universe. Pressure waves propagate through the air. Molecules collide with each other, forming certain patterns. When these patterns reach your eardrum at certain frequencies, your brain creates the sensation of sound. Music does not exist outside your head. The universe is silent, completely, utterly silent. Your brain runs a conversion program translating physical vibrations into auditory perception. Everything that you think is out there is actually generated inside your skull. You do not perceive the world directly. You perceive it based on limited sensory data, which your brain tries to guess what lies beyond your world.
But touch feels different, doesn't it? More real, more immediate, more reliable than sight or hearing. And there's a reason for that. Touch has evolutionary priority. Your distant ancestors didn't have sophisticated sight or hearing, but they did have mechanoreceptors, cells that respond to physical pressure. Touch is your most ancient sense, your most primitive connection to your environment. Your brain has evolved to perceive touch as the gold standard of reality. When you see something and touch something, and they don't match, you trust your touch. Magicians take advantage of this all the time. You feel a coin in your hand, its weight, texture, density. You are sure it is there. Then they open your hand and the coin disappears. The sensation was real. The interpretation was wrong. Your brain generated the sensation of the coin based on electromagnetic information that could have been caused by other factors. In 1998, neuroscientist Matthew Botwinick conducted an experiment that destroyed people's sense of bodily integrity. He placed a rubber hand on the table in front of the participants, hiding their real hand behind a screen. Then he simultaneously stroked the rubber hand and the real hand with a brush. After a few minutes, the participants felt that the rubber hand was their own. When the researchers suddenly pricked the rubber hand with a needle, the participants flinched in fear, even though their real hand was completely safe. Your sense of your own body, the most intimate and reliable knowledge you possess, can be disrupted by conflicting sensory information. The boundary between you and not you is exchangeable. Let's take a closer look. You think you are solid because you cannot walk through walls, but that's not entirely accurate. The reason you cannot walk through walls is not because you are solid, but because the wall is solid. The fact is that the electromagnetic repulsion between your atoms and the atoms of the wall is strong enough to prevent your electron clouds from overlapping. But under certain conditions, particles can pass through barriers that should be impenetrable. This is called quantum tunneling. Electrons do this all the time. There is a non-zero probability that an electron on one side of a barrier will spontaneously appear on the other side without ever crossing the barrier. It doesn't jump over it, fly under it, or go around it. It just appears on the other side. This is not a theory. It is a fundamental principle of how scanning tunneling microscopes work, and it happens billions of times per second in your body. Here's what's disturbing. There is a non-zero probability that all the atoms in your hand could simultaneously pass through a wall under the influence of quantum tunneling. The probability is astronomically small, something like 1 in 10 to the 10 to the 30. But it is not zero. In principle, you could put your hand on the wall and it would pass through it like a ghost. This will not happen. The universe will most likely perish before this happens. But the laws of physics do not prohibit it. Your certainty is not absolute. It is statistical. Now, let me tell you about an event in 2019 that most people missed. Researchers at the University of Chicago demonstrated a phenomenon called quantum superposition in objects visible to the naked eye. They took a tiny aluminum drum, still microscopic, but massive by quantum standards, and made it exist in two states at once, vibrating and not vibrating simultaneously. This is important because quantum weirdness was thought to apply only to individual particles. Large objects were considered unambiguously classical, existing in one state, in one place, performing one action at a time. But the boundary between quantum and classical reality is more blurred than we thought. The rules that make particles fuzzy and probabilistic may apply to larger objects than we assumed. Your body contains about 7 octillion atoms, that's 7 with 27 zeros. Each of them obeys the laws of quantum mechanics. Each of them has no definite position until it is measured. The question that no one can answer is, at what point do all these quantum particles collectively become you, a single, definite classical object with a specific location and state? The answer may be this: they never do. Perhaps you are not as reliable as you think you are, and this applies to aspects that we do not yet fully understand.
That's what really haunts physicists at night. When your hand approaches the table, electromagnetic repulsion prevents it from approaching. You feel resistance. But why is electromagnetic repulsion felt at all? Why are they not just particles that repel other particles in the dark, without any sensations from others? This is called the difficult problem of consciousness, and it is the deepest mystery in science. We can explain the physical mechanism of touch, electromagnetic forces, nerve impulses, brain activity, but we cannot explain why subjective experience is associated with it. Why is there something that means to be yourself, to feel these feelings? Your sense of touch is your brain's interpretation of electromagnetic data, but your brain is just atoms obeying physical laws. These atoms are not solid. It's mostly empty space and quantum probability. So where exactly is the you that is experiencing all this? Where is that feeling? Some physicists claim that consciousness can be a fundamental property of the universe, like mass or charge. Even simple systems can have elementary forms of experience. Your rich, complex consciousness is simply what happens when you organize enough of this fundamental consciousness in the right way. According to this view, the universe is not dead matter that periodically generates experiences in the biological brain. The universe is an experience throughout, and your body is a particularly complex way of organizing it. Let me get back to something specific. You are watching this video right now. It seems to you that you are sitting or standing somewhere, touching objects. You feel the weight, the pressure, the temperature. Everything seems stable and real. But here's what's really going on. Your atoms and the atoms around you repel each other through electromagnetic forces. This repulsion causes a flow of ions through the membranes of nerve cells in your skin. These currents create electrical signals that travel through neurons to the spinal cord and further to the brain. Patterns of electrical and chemical activity arise in your brain. Billions of neurons are activated synchronously. Somehow, from this electrical storm in your skull, you get the feeling of sitting, touching, and feeling. You don't touch the world. You interpret electromagnetic data and build a model of touch that is good enough to survive, but may have nothing to do with what is actually there. And here's the existential catch. If you've never touched anything, you've never touched another person. Every hug is about atoms hovering next to atoms. Every handshake is an electromagnetic repulsion. Every moment of physical intimacy is your quantum cloud of probabilities pushing off from another person's quantum cloud of probabilities in empty space.
So what's real? If touch is an illusion, if materiality is an illusion, if even the boundaries of one's own body are subject to discussion, what remains? Perhaps this is the wrong question. Perhaps reality is not something that exists independently of observation and is waiting to be discovered. Perhaps reality is something that arises as a result of interaction. When your electronic clouds come into contact with the electronic clouds of an object, something new arises, the feeling of touch. It's not there inside the object, and it's not here in your brain. It is in a relationship, in interaction, in the space between them. You've never touched anything, because touching is not what you imagined. It's not just the contact of two solid objects. It's an electromagnetic dance interpreted by the nervous system, which has evolved to keep you alive rather than show you the truth. Touch is a useful interface, like icons on a computer screen. The folder icon doesn't show what's actually going on in the hardware. It gives you a simplified view that you can interact with effectively. Your entire sensory reality can be an interface. Shapes, colors, sounds, textures, all these are symbols representing something much more strange and complex, hidden beneath the surface. Evolution has not shaped your feelings to reveal reality. She formed them in order to help you survive and reproduce. Truth and survival are not the same thing. The atoms in your hand have never touched the atoms of anything else. It's true. But perhaps the deeper truth is this. The concept of touch is a map, not a territory. This is the story your brain tells about electromagnetic interactions. And, as with all good stories, it's not about how true they are in the literal sense. The point is whether it helps you navigate the world. You've never touched anything, but nevertheless you have experienced something deep and real, even if this reality turned out to be stranger and more beautiful than you could ever imagine. The void between your atoms and everything else is not an empty space. It is full of forces, fields, and interactions. That's where reality happens. The distance between your hand and the world is where you exist. And that's enough.